Hey, welcome to our channel. Yellowstone is big, complicated, and crowded. A lot of people on our channel have told us that it's kind of a challenge to plan a trip to Yellowstone National Park. So in this video, we want to give you all the details that you're going to need to plan your trip. We're going to try to simplify it for you and make it nice and easy.
I'm going to make you a promise right now. This is longer than a typical YouTube video. So just settle in and listen. It's going to save you hours of time. Because I know when I go to research a vacation, normally I'm like pulling things from lots of different places and it takes me hours. Or if I don't put the time in before, I kind of waste time on the vacation because I don't know the most efficient way to do it. So just settle in, grab a pencil and paper, grab your map, and we'll give you some great information to really get you started on your trip to Yellowstone. Now, if you don't want to do that, we do have a website. We're in the Rockies, and on that website we have a guide. You can just buy it, print it, and then you don't have to listen to this whole spiel. But hang with us, we have some good information for you today.
Okay, so consider this a beginner's guide to Yellowstone. A lot of people that watch our videos say that they get out their notepad and take notes while they're watching this, so you might want to consider doing that. Plus, we use maps a lot, so I've put a link to the Yellowstone Park map in the description. You might want to print that off and take notes as well. My name's Matt, and this is Cheryl, and we have been going to Yellowstone for over 30 years, dating back to when we were kids and our parents took us there quite a bit. So this is a place that's pretty special to us. We're both educators. Cheryl teaches special education and I teach a night class at the local university. So we really just want to share our love of Yellowstone with you.
Okay, so in this video, we are going to talk about pretty much everything you need to know to plan your trip, like popular road trips, popular airports, where to eat, where to stay, when to make your reservations, how long to stay for, where to find wildlife, popular sites, all sorts of things like that. So just hang tight and we will get to all those things.
Okay, the very first thing is just we want to talk about what Yellowstone is. Really, if you've never been, you're probably watching this because you've never been to Yellowstone. So I just want to explain a little bit about what it is. It's the world's first national park. It was created as a national park in 1872, protected by the government. The first time ever that a government protected land for the benefit and enjoyment of the people. And a large part of the reason why they did this was because of all the geysers there and the hot springs. This was really unusual. When explorers started finding these things, they were really fascinated by them. Yellowstone has half of all the world's geysers in it, which is absolutely amazing. And so obviously there's the very famous Old Faithful geyser, but there are just so many more. There are about 500 geysers in Yellowstone. And
they're so cool. It's like you're on a different planet when you see these geysers. They're incredible.
It is like a different planet. That's exactly right. So Yellowstone's just been a park that has held a place in our imagination ever since. People, when they think of it, they think of the geysers, they think of bears, they think of bison, wolves, maybe the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, this yellow rock, where it gets its name. In the past, it's been called Wonderland, and of course Jellystone. So it really holds quite a place in pop culture and our imagination. Now when you visit a lot of national parks, a lot of them are kind of static. They're kind of, you're looking at mountains or cliffs or canyons or things like that. Yellowstone is quite an active place. It's moving. There's movement all over. You'll literally just be walking down the boardwalks and you'll see water shooting up out of the ground. You'll see bison walking by, bears running across the road in front of you. So it's really quite an amazing place.
Okay, so getting to Yellowstone. For many of you, Yellowstone is really far away. We're lucky, we live in the West and it's about a 4-hour drive from our home in Utah. But a lot of you probably are flying in, and so many people do this as part of a big road trip to the West. I just wanted to go over a few popular things that people do. Okay, first of all, Yellowstone does go into a couple of different states like Wyoming and Montana, but it's mostly in Wyoming, so just know that.
There are 5 entrances to the park. There's the north, there's the northeast, there's the east, the south, which is coming in from Grand Teton, and then the west, which is the most popular entrance from West Yellowstone.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. If you're flying in, many people fly into Bozeman, Montana. Some people fly south into Jackson. Jackson is right outside of Grand Teton. Jackson Hole is a famous place. I always call it like the glitzy cowboy town. Mm-hmm. It's Western, but it's upscale Western. And then Salt Lake City Airport is another popular place to fly in, and then you drive and you head in through the West Yellowstone gate, and that West Yellowstone is probably one of our favorite places to stay, mostly because it's close for us. But West Yellowstone is actually a city outside of Yellowstone, and it's the biggest city outside of Yellowstone. Grand Teton and Jackson Hole are bigger, but they're further down. You're an hour and a half, 2 hours away from the park, where West Yellowstone is just, you go right into the park there, and it's by the lower loop where a lot of the attractions are. So many people do road trips. So if you want to go see, if you're coming in from the east, you can go see Mount Rushmore in the Badlands, and we are so excited. We're gonna go to Mount Rushmore this summer, so look for our info on Mount Rushmore pretty soon. If you're coming from California, you can go through Vegas. You can go see Zion, which is another incredible, incredible national park. Salt Lake City, and one of our favorite stops on the way on that road trip is to go to Bear World in Rexburg, Idaho. Like, if you're driving that way, you gotta go check out Bear World, especially if you have kids. You get to drive through, you see bears, cubs, all sorts of things. Wolves, bison, there's a little petting zoo, and there's even a little amusement park and free fudge. So, strongly endorse Bear World.
You might think that, well, I'm going to see bears in Yellowstone. There's no guarantee that you see bears in Yellowstone. They can actually be kind of hard to find sometimes. So going to Bear World in Rexburg, Idaho is an amazing experience. Plus, we might have, we're going to talk about it later, but the Grizzly Wolf and Discovery Center in West Yellowstone. Okay.
Now from the northwest, like coming from Idaho or Montana, which seriously, we lived in Montana for a summer. It is God's country, so beautiful there. But there's no national parks on the way, but oh my goodness, just beauty all around you. So you're gonna have a great time even getting to Yellowstone. Your trip's gonna be awesome before you get there. One other thing I wanna bring up is you don't go to Yellowstone without hitting Grand Teton.
If it's your first time coming all the way
If you're
out.
coming all the way out here from back east or somewhere really far away, Grand Teton is only an hour and a half away from the south entrance of Yellowstone, and the mountains are gorgeous. It's like everywhere you look, incredible mountains. Just, I mean, it is like what you picture of like the national parks, beautiful mountain west. Like Yellowstone is unique because of the geysers and the wildlife and things like that, but Grand Teton is like nature at its best. It is really cool. And we have that covered. So if you want to visit Grand Teton, we have a whole other video just like this on Grand Teton. But give yourself a couple extra days to do that park and you'll be glad you did. Oh, and people also will see Geyser on this trip too. Geyser National Park. Another, man, I just love them all. It's too hard to say which one's the best, but I hate the idea of you missing any of those. So if you can, go to all three of them.
Quite common to hit these three as a big vacation out west for people. Geyser is a lot farther away though. Well, 4 or 5 hours away from Yellowstone, something like that. But Yellowstone and Teton right next to each other. We'll have guides for all three of those if you want to visit those soon. Okay, so next topic is getting around Yellowstone. This is a very common question that we get on our channel. Is people have questions about getting around Yellowstone because it's such a big park. So it's the size of Delaware and Rhode Island combined, which gives you some feel for how big our states are out west. It just takes up a corner of Wyoming and it's still massive. One of our largest national parks in the lower 48 for sure. Okay, so you have to have a vehicle to get around, obviously. There are no shuttles in Yellowstone. You might have heard this year they are piloting a brand new shuttle, like a driverless shuttle, but it's only for just a tiny section of the park if you're staying in Canyon Village. It's just to get around Canyon Village and restaurants. It's nothing that you can get around the park in at all. You need a car to see Yellowstone for sure.
And with that, I wanted to just bring up that as you're planning a trip, and as we shoot these videos, we do our very best to have the most up-to-date information, but things are always changing, and so we've created a website that we can really update easily. And so I encourage you to go to we'reintherockies.com if you're planning a trip immediately, just to see what the current conditions are. We also highly recommend going to the National Parks website because that is the most current information. We've created this because we feel like sometimes it's a little hard to get a comprehensive view of everything you need to know about visiting a national park on the National Parks website, but they will let you know which things are open, which things are closed, when to reserve tickets for things, all that stuff. That's where you're going to find the most current information.
Okay, so the park is laid out in what's called the Grand Loop Road. The Grand Loop Road is a huge oval that goes around the park. We do not recommend ever driving around the Grand Loop Road in one day. It's massive, takes 4 to 7 hours depending on traffic jams and things like that. There's a connecting road in the middle of the Grand Loop Road. So we really just refer to it as the upper loop and the lower loop. The Grand Loop Road, by the way, is located, in the middle of the park. It takes a while just to get from the park entrances, those 5 park entrances, to the Grand Loop. So you'll do a lot of driving in Yellowstone. To drive around one of the loops takes 2 to 2.5 hours. That's if you're just driving. You might run into buffalo jams, we call them, where you're just parked there and buffalo are standing in the middle of the road blocking your way. You might run into other jams, they're called bear jams. Bear jams come from the old days when people would literally stop and feed the bears. This was okay up all the way through the 1960s. You could just stop and feed the bears from your car, so they called them bear jams. Today, bear jams are more like people who stop to see a bear. And if you see, this happens all the time, you'll just be driving down the road and suddenly traffic jam because everybody's looking at the wildlife that they saw off to the side. So without jams, 2 to 2.5 hours to drive around the park. The recommendation here is that you can count on approximately 30 minutes from point to major point. As I'm showing you here on the map, there are like 5 major points on the lower loop, 4 major points on the upper loop. Now it might only take you, 10 or 15, but it might take you a little longer. The speed limit is 45 miles per hour. And we really encourage you to not speed, because even though at times you might be able to go faster than the 45, there are wildlife that could come jetting out in front of you at any moment. It is actually one of the major ways that wildlife die in Yellowstone, because you can't hunt Yellowstone, but there are still plenty of human-caused deaths in Yellowstone because people are speeding.
Yes, and then one other thing to think about is that Yellowstone is visited by very many international visitors. So there are a lot of people there that aren't used to American traffic laws, and so just be cautious, be careful, and help everyone out by being a safe driver.
Okay, one last thing on the driving time is that I mentioned that the Grand Loop Road is located in the middle. The Grand Loop Road, by the way, called the Grand Loop because in the early days when visitors visited before the automobile, they would get to Gardner and a horse and carriage company would take them around the park in a loop. And it would take them about a week. They would go stopping at a different hotel every night to see the park. Really quite an amazing way to see the park, I think. And it's so big, that's the only way they could do it, is just to go from one place to another for like a whole week, seeing each side as you go. So they call it the Grand Loop. So the last thing there is that since it's located in the middle, it really would save you a lot of driving time if you stay in the park. There are many places to stay in the park. We'll talk about those later.
Okay, so what to see and do. All right, we might want to alternate these because there's a lot.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, so probably one of the most awe-inspiring ones is the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. It is completely gorgeous. Waterfalls, yellow rock, canyon. You can see it from lots of different vantage points, but we prefer Artist Point. That's our favorite place to look at it. So that's definitely, you must go to it every time you go. We always go to Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. Even though we've seen it 30 times, it's fine. We love it.
It is quite a magical place. We've had many people on our channel say they just couldn't get the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone out of their mind. In fact, the reason why it's called Artist Point is because one of the early visitors to the park also couldn't get it out of his mind and painted a huge 7x12 canvas painting of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, very famous image that actually helped it to become a national park. So this is really an iconic site. This is the #1 thing in Yellowstone.
And I know Matt wants to talk more about this, but he made a whole other video about it. Just check that out if you want to hear more about it, because it's a pretty good video. #2 is Old Faithful. Old Faithful, the most iconic image of Yellowstone probably. You're familiar with the Tower of Water with the plume at the top. Old Faithful is I know that there are people out there that are like, oh, Old Faithful is just a kind of a touristy thing. I disagree. I think Old Faithful is great. You gather, there's a ton of people that gather around. There's a huge sitting area and boardwalk around Old Faithful. We go there every time, and it's great. It puts on a great show. It's one of the best geysers in the park. Yes, and it's guaranteed. You will see a geyser erupt if you go to Old Faithful Geyser Basin. In fact, if you buy our guide, Matt tells you how you could probably hit 2 or 3 of them and see them erupt, because there's more than just Old Faithful at the Old Faithful Geyser Basin that erupts regularly. So yeah, you can get the guide or watch our video on it. I think we have videos on this too. So either way, just know that, like, set your standards a little higher. You can see more than one geyser erupt. Oh, Grand Prismatic Spring. This is just beautiful. I just don't even know how to put it into words. We're gonna put a picture up there so you can see it.
It used to be called Emerald Lake, just to give you an idea. This is a hot spring, but it's massive. It's bigger than a football field.
And you're gonna see just cascades of colors like rusty orange and turquoise blue, just some incredible colors, and you can see deep down into that Grand Prismatic. And something really special about Grand Prismatic as well is you can see it on the boardwalk, like at eye level and close up, but you can also go on a little hike and see it from up high, and that's what you have to go do that. Like, you haven't seen Grand Prismatic unless you've kind of climbed up and seen it from up higher.
The next thing on our list here is viewing wildlife. Most people really, that I have heard of probably, are coming to Yellowstone mainly to view the wildlife, and it is one of the best places in the lower 48 states to view wildlife. There are two main valleys in the park, that is Lamar Valley and Hayden Valley, to view wildlife. There are tons of bison roaming. The bison roam all over the place. You're guaranteed to see bison, that is for sure, and they're so cool.
Yeah,
I love
it's
the
like
bison.
when you go to Florida, you're gonna see an alligator even if you're on the freeway.
Yeah.
If you go to Yellowstone, you're gonna see a bison. You don't need to look for them. They're gonna be around.
Yeah. Lamar and Hayden is where you might also see grizzly bears, black bears. Most of the wolves hang out in Lamar Valley or in the northern part of the park. So beautiful, just beautiful places to drive through, great places to spot wildlife.
Yes, and Lamar is gonna be out of your way, but Hayden isn't. You are gonna be driving through Hayden Valley when you're driving around.
Hayden's right on the lower loop. Lamar, a little bit out of the way. We'll talk about that a little bit later too.
Okay, next is Mammoth Hot Springs. That's on the upper loop at the top of it, kind of by Gardner, if you're staying in that area. And Mammoth Hot Springs
is a city. Okay, it's where the park headquarters is. There's actually, there's a lot going on at Mammoth.
But the main feature there is Mammoth Hot Springs,
Yes.
which has these travertine terraces.
Travertine terraces.
Yes, travertine terraces. And their glory days are kind of behind them. Yellowstone's always kind of moving a little bit, and so it doesn't have the active water that's drizzling down, but it's like an inside-out cave. Like, you're in a cave without the darkness and the cold dampness. Like, it's cool, but there's not as much geyser activity there anymore, but you don't see land features like that everywhere. Like, it's very rare to see nowhere like besides like that. Like, they're neat. And so if you're going there for the first time or only time, you got to see that because you won't see it anywhere else.
Mammoth also has Fort Yellowstone, which is where the Army was stationed in the early days. So when the park was created, there was no National Park Service at the time, and there were still people coming in poaching animals and ruining some of the geyser formations and stuff.
Just causing problems, yes.
So they stationed the Army to oversee this massive park. So Fort Yellowstone is there. Also, Roosevelt Arch is near Mammoth Hot Springs, and Boiling River is near there, which is a great place to get in the water that we'll talk about later.
Okay. Can I talk about Yellowstone Lake?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is Yellowstone Lake. This place is so big. Like, as far as the eye can see, I think Yellowstone Lake is either 300 or 400 feet deep, super cold, okay? This is not a place that you go swimming in. It averages about 41 to 42 degrees in the summer, so it's not a warm lake, but many people enjoy fishing in it. There's a lot of rules about fishing in Yellowstone, and so you'll definitely want to check out the park website if you're a fisherman, and people enjoy fly fishing in Yellowstone as well. Like, there's great fishing there. People enjoy it, and it's so picturesque when you see people out fly fishing in the rivers. But Yellowstone Lake is just cool to see, and like, if you go down to West Thumb Geyser Basin, you can actually see some geysers that are in the lake. It's really neat. So yeah, Yellowstone Lake is cool. Just don't plan on swimming in it.
Nope. Okay, the next thing is geyser basins and waterfalls. We'll just kind of lump these together. So there are like 11 geyser basins in the park. The big ones are Upper Geyser Basin, which is where Old Faithful is, Midway Geyser Basin, which is where Grand Prismatic Spring is, and then Lower Geyser Basin, which has a famous geyser named Great Fountain Geyser. That's a really beautiful erupting geyser. And then maybe the next popular one is Norris Geyser Basin and West Thumb Geyser Basin. Maybe those two kind of tied together. Anyway, there's just so many geyser basins. Some people say they get quite tired. You know, once you've seen one, you've seen them all. So, which is why our guide, we try to have kind of a game plan for actually seeing geysers erupt, because if you see them erupt, it actually changes the experience a bit. It's just more enjoyable when you see geysers erupt at Yellowstone.
Well, and can we talk about the 4 types of geysers?
Sure.
Okay, so that's something else you need to know. There's 4 types of geysers. There's cone geysers, right?
Well, there's geysers that shoot.
Yes, like Old Faithful. That's like what most people picture a geyser, right?
So a geyser that shoots they have cone geysers,
Yes.
which kind of like Old Faithful, they just shoot out of the ground. Great Fountain Geyser is called a fountain geyser, which shoots out of a lake of water, essentially.
Yeah. Then there's the springs.
Hot springs.
Hot springs, like Grand Prismatic Springs. So they look like, they're so big they look like lakes. They're just big and they're filled with pretty water.
Mm-hmm. Well, and some of them are really small and gorgeous, just deep blue colors that you look way deep down into the thing.
And then there's these mud pots that it's just like this bubbling mud and it's stinky.
Yep.
That's something else you need to know about Yellowstone. It's not a place of sweet smells. It's a stinky place.
There's a lot of smells.
And then the last one are fumaroles. So it's just hot gas coming out of the ground. But
Steam vents.
yeah, steam vents. So you can find all 4. They're real easy to find. But the different geyser basins kind of have different varieties of those things. And like Matt said, there are some geyser basins that are better than others. Like especially if you're only going to be there one time, you'll definitely want to hit the best ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like just 2 times ago when we visited, we went there early in the morning, and the whole land was just steaming up, right? It was just a big cloud. It's the most amazing sight. It's incredible. Okay, waterfalls. We mentioned waterfalls. There's a lot of waterfalls. There are like 300 waterfalls in Yellowstone. But there are quite a few that are just right on the loop, the upper and the lower loop, that you can just pull over, and they're amazing waterfalls.
We call them the B-list falls because there's the famous falls, like there's Tower and Upper Falls and Lower Falls, which Lower Falls I just love. But these B-list falls are actually, they're incredible. Like I would hike 5 miles to see one of those, but in Yellowstone you don't have to do that. You just pull around the side of the road and you literally have to just walk a few feet from your car to go see it. And I just wanted to throw something in here too, that Yellowstone is incredibly friendly to people who are disabled. Like if walking's hard, if you're in a wheelchair, there are boardwalks everywhere. It's very, very accessible. So if mobility is a challenge for you or someone that you're traveling with, fear not. You're gonna have a good trip to Yellowstone. There's just great accessibility to see many, many of the things in the park.
Okay, a couple of other activities that you can do at Yellowstone is you can swim. There are 2 places you can swim, which is Firehole River, which we don't recommend. I haven't been in it, but Cheryl says the current's kind of strong and it can be a little dangerous, so she says no on Firehole River.
And I want to also point out, the name's a little deceiving. Firehole, you're picturing like hot tub. No. Some geyser water goes into that river, making it tolerable to swim in.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the hot spring water mixes in with all the rivers, of course, are freezing cold because it's really high up. But the hot spring water makes it a little tolerable.
Yeah, so
right?
I mean, if you're gonna do Firehole River, which is fine if you want to go do that, bring a life jacket, bring some aqua socks because it's rocky, and you'll be all right. And keep an eye on those little kids, and then pay attention to the current of the river. Make sure it's not too fast. But our favorite place to go is.
Go ahead. Boiling River.
Boiling River. We like the Boiling River.
Okay, again, Boiling River because the hot spring water is emptying into the Gardner River, and actually that hot spring water is really hot, and you can sit right next to it where it is boiling, honestly. But then it mixes in with the cold Gardner River, and it is an amazing experience because you get these hot currents and these cold currents, and so there's a little sitting spot there that people have kind of put some rocks around, and very popular spot. That's
the thing. The secret's kind of getting out on the Boiling River. It's near Mammoth, so it's upper loop. You're gonna have to hike about a mile to get to it, but it's flat, easy. I would recommend, though, this is some ninja tips for you staying here and watching this long video, is change your clothes before you go. There's 2 bathrooms there, and it's pretty popular. You could end up waiting to change your clothes for a long time, so make some other arrangements to get into your bathing suit. And
change your clothes. Wear your tennis shoes out there. Bring your water shoes because you're going to step in among the rocks and it is pretty rocky. So, and then of course bring your towel. Okay, those
Yeah.
are the big tips.
Yeah, but you'll enjoy it. That's a really nice break, because here's the thing about Yellowstone. Those geyser basins are cool, and looking at the wildlife is cool, but it's kind of just nice to get in the water and relax. It adds some variety to your trip, so we recommend doing that stop for sure.
We didn't bring up fishing. Neither of us are.
I talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, you did. That's another activity that you can do, not just at Yellowstone Lake, but Yellowstone's quite famous for its fishing. I'm just
Like
not a
fly
fisherman.
fishing, and you can bike in Yellowstone. One of our best places we think to bike is at the Old Faithful Geyser Basin. The Old Faithful Geyser Basin has miles of boardwalks, but one of the coolest things is at Morning Glory Spring at the end of it, and there's a geyser that shoots off into the river. You can take a bike path from the parking lot at Old Faithful clear over to that. It's about a mile long, and you can ride a bike. You can even rent them at the Old Faithful Snow Lodge right there and go ride a bike, and that'll save you some time if you don't want to walk that far. We're not real avid bicyclists,
Right.
but we did take our bikes to Yellowstone last time we went, and it was pretty cool to ride our bikes. And we also rode a little trail kind of in the back.
Behind Grand Prismatic,
Yeah.
there's a trail. I wouldn't call Yellowstone a biker's park, except in the spring they open up to bikers only, that they can just ride in on the roads with no cars. That'd be pretty cool. But other than that, I wouldn't count on biking around the Grand Loop Road. It's kind of dangerous. The shoulders are narrow. I would not do that. There are some biking paths there, but nothing that are like real long, like at Grand Teton maybe. They have real long biking paths.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't say Yellowstone's a biker's park, but we liked bringing our bikes, and it saved us some time getting around some places, and it was kind of nice off the beaten path.
Because you're just out in nature, and
Mhm.
it's kind of a nice way to experience it. All right, safety.
This is your thing.
I love talking about safety. Okay, lots of people are scared to go to Yellowstone. They're worried about being a super volcano. They're worried about bears. Okay. Okay.
That's true.
They're legit things.
Yep.
So let me ease your fears. Okay. Number one, Yellowstone's not going to blow up while you're there. Okay. We just did a video on the super volcano. We're pretty confident it's not going to blow up on you, so you're going to be okay that way. The other thing, let's talk about bears for a minute. Bears, first of all, there's not tons of bears there, and they generally stay away from where people are. We've done everything when we go to Yellowstone. We've stayed in a hotel, we've brought our trailer, we've even slept in a tent. We've done all of it, and I felt safe. The only time I would really worry about bears is hiking in the backcountry. If you're just hitting the normal tourist sites, the geysers, Hayden Valley, going around that way, you could encounter and see a bear, but it would most likely be on the side of the road. There will be lots of people there, and the rangers are always right there on that situation. What I do want to caution you about are bison. Okay, bison, it's really easy to look at a bison and think it's a giant lazy cow, because they're always laying on the side of the road, or they get dangerously close to your car when they decide to cross the road and you're just sitting there waiting for them to cross. But no animal injures more people in Yellowstone than bison do. And so be respectful. The rules for the park is 25 yards away from bison and elk, and then 100 yards away from a bear.
Bears and wolves.
Yeah, bears and wolves. So, those rules are there for a reason, to protect people and to protect the animals. Animals that get real comfortable with humans, they a lot of times have to euthanize them. So you want to make sure that you're preserving these animals too. Like you're helping protect those animals by keeping your distance, not just yourself, but you're protecting those animals too. And they do have some pretty strict rules about that human contact with animals. They don't want your food out anywhere. So if you're camping, make sure to put all your food away in your car, lock it up. Don't leave your tablecloth out. Don't leave your water bottles out. Those Yellowstone Rangers do not mess around. They will give you a ticket if you leave those things out.
Yep.
Also, I wanted to talk to you about bear spray. Okay, if you do choose to do some backcountry hiking in Yellowstone, be smart and bring bear spray with you. In fact, one of my coworkers, her and her husband, they were out doing some backcountry fishing, and they were attacked by a bison. Like, it had been like a docile bison that was just hanging out. They weren't approaching it or anything, but it got riled up and it charged them. And here's a special tip for you. Bear spray works on any animal.
Yeah.
And or human. Matt and I did a whole video on bear sprays and which is the best one. You can watch it. But after testing all those bear sprays, I've seriously considered that I might rather be mauled by a bear than get sprayed by bear spray. That stuff is wicked powerful, so you want to be safe, know how to use it, but just be aware of how dangerous any of the wildlife can be, and but also that bear spray will work on any animal. And then lastly, about driving 45 miles an hour, just keep the speed limit, keeps you, others, and animals safe.
Okay, next up is where to stay at Yellowstone. So behind me you see the famous Old Faithful Inn. This is an amazing building. So this is one of 9 lodges or hotels that you can stay at inside the park at Yellowstone. They also have some places like some cabins that you can stay in. So there are quite a few options. So we just kind of want to give you an overview of some of the things that you need to know about staying in the park. First of all, you can book places in the park up to 13 months in advance. About a year in advance they open up for reservations.
And they do fill up fairly quickly, especially the Old Faithful Inn.
Yes. Now I was able to book at the Old Faithful Inn this year, like earlier this year I was able to get a spot for June, at the very beginning of June, when it's not quite as visited. But then they canceled their reservation thanks to Corona. But anyway, so staying in the park will save you driving time. That's one of the big, huge advantages of it. But one thing to know, you can see this is a pretty old building. This was built in 1903. A lot of people say it's the largest log building in the world. It really is a marvel to go in and look at. But these places are not known for their amenities.
No.
They don't have air conditioning. Now you really don't need it because the temperatures really don't get that hot at Yellowstone, 80 degrees at the most, or on average. But then they don't have televisions, most of them?
Most of the rooms, you can get a TV if you stay up in Mammoth, but that's it.
A lot of them you're sharing bathrooms with other people.
Yes.
Right?
So I mean they're making you rough it a little bit. So just plan on that.
The newest and the largest is Canyon Village, the Canyon Hotel. That is the last one to fill up. Anyway, that's the biggest one. Okay, if you stay outside of the park, we would recommend West Yellowstone or Gardner. Okay, because those two are closest to the park. Now remember, just to drive from the park entrance to the Grand Loop Road takes 20 minutes plus. Okay.
And well, the other thing is you can get in a lineup getting into the park.
Yes.
Like if you aren't up and at 'em early in the morning, you can be in a pretty big line just to enter Yellowstone Park. But if you're staying in the park, you bypass all that. Mm-hmm. And like Matt's saying, most of the entrances, there's a decent drive getting from wherever you're staying outside of the park, just even to get to the park and then to the road. So yes.
Yeah, so West Yellowstone, it literally sits right next to the entrance. It's just, you hop in, it's really great.
And Gardner's the same way.
Gardner's the same way. Yeah. So those are easily the 2 best spots. Now, some people will think that Cody, Wyoming is a jumping off spot for Yellowstone. They kind of advertise themselves as a jumping off spot. It is not a place to stay, in our opinion. Like if it was your only option, I guess you'd do it. But the thing is, it takes like 2 hours to get from Cody to, I think, Old Faithful on the lower loop. I mean, it takes you an hour and a half at least just to get to the loop from Cody, and then you got to drive around the loop, and then you got to go back. It's a long ways. The other place that we might recommend, though, is up in the northeast corner, on that northeast entrance, there's a city called Cook City / Silvergate. And it's a tiny little town, but that would be a good spot to maybe spend a night if you were going to hit Lamar Valley on the way in or out or something like that. Because Lamar is kind of hard to get to. From Gardner, it takes like an hour and a half to get out all the way to the end of Lamar or something like that. So you're doing quite a bit of driving.
And it's real far from the West Gate.
And from West Yellowstone, it's almost impossible to go to Lamar and back. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can do it, but you're skipping over everything else. Yeah, Cook City would be a good option to stay a night or something like that. That's what we're going to do this year, actually. We're going to stop at Cook City.
And it's not part of a Yellowstone trip. We're just going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're just going there.
Anyway, driving is a major thing at Yellowstone that you need to be aware of. Yellowstone can actually be kind of exhausting because you're driving a lot, and again, you might get stuck in these traffic jams, and so it'll kind of test your patience occasionally. So we just encourage you to think of Yellowstone as an experience and to just enjoy what it brings. One time we were driving along the road from Norris up to Mammoth. We stopped for a little picnic spot. That's another insider tip, by the way. Tons of picnic spots around the park. And there was a pelican hunting for fish. And it was floating down the river. And then it'd fly up to the top of the river and float back down. And we sat there and watched that pelican for 30 minutes to an hour or something like that. And it was just a marvel to kind of see nature play its course, right? And so just encourage you to kind of enjoy it as it comes and take those moments like that. And you know, no plan is going to be perfect at Yellowstone.
Now, I did a whole other video on places to stay in Yellowstone, so if you want it to be more comprehensive, you can watch that. But the other thing to know is that there's other places to stay outside of the park. Like we talk about West Yellowstone, there's tons of hotels. We love the Days Inn. They have a water slide there. Our kids love that.
Oh yeah, the Days Inn was great.
Yeah, and the other thing is just if you really can't, and also those hotels right outside, like in West Yellowstone, that's your best bet if you're doing a last minute trip to Yellowstone. You know, you might not be able to secure lodging if you're planning a week in advance inside the park, but you can. We've done a couple impromptu trips to Yellowstone, and we've just stayed in West Yellowstone at a hotel, and it's worked out great. So if you're a last minute planner, maybe do that. Also, Island Park is near West Yellowstone. It's a little further away than you'd probably like, but you could still stay there. And they have a lot of VRBOs, Airbnbs. If you have a larger group, you can find some accommodations there.
Okay, our next topic is where to camp. So again, there's inside the park and there's outside the park. So inside the park, there are 12 campgrounds. The largest of these are in the middle of the park, thankfully. So like Canyon Village, Norris, and Madison. And those really are the ideal spots you want to camp. Okay, let me just give you a quick overview of camping in Yellowstone. Here on the map, you can see the red locations are reservable camping spots. And the blue ones are first come, first serve. And this is a change for the 2021 season, specifically the top three there, Mammoth, Slough Creek, and Pebble Creek, all moved to a reservation system either fully or partially. For 2021, Norris and Tower are closed. Now, Fishing Bridge is RV only. You have to have a hard side trailer to stay there. That is also closed in 2021. They're renovating it right now. So limited options for 2021, but if you want to camp at Yellowstone, you want to make sure you get on at the open window times, again about 6 months in advance, because they do book up very quickly, especially some of the smaller ones up in Lamar Valley, like Slough Creek and Pebble Creek. Those will fill up pretty quick.
Camping in Yellowstone's fun. It really does give you a chance to connect with park and the nature and waking up without mountain air. If you can camp, I would recommend camping in Yellowstone.
That's usually the way. In fact, I'm not sure we stayed in the park other than camping. We love camping. I believe those open up 6 months in advance. So as opposed to the lodges, the hotels, which open up a year in advance, campgrounds are like 6 months in advance on those reservations.
And it's super common for people it's funny. People start looking like December to book their campsite for June, right? Because it's 6 months away. So, you know, if you're watching this early, be thinking about that. Think 6 months ahead and reserve that campsite.
The first come, first serve campgrounds will fill up oftentimes around 6 o'clock in the morning. So people will drive there like in the middle of the night almost and wait in line for the morning for some people to leave so they can get in there. That's how popular camping has gotten here. I imagine in the whole country, but certainly here in the Rockies, it has gone nuts in the recent years. So that's a few things which you need to know about camping in the park. Now, outside of the park is run mostly by the Forest Service, so it's a different agency. That's you know, that you can't find all this information in one place. That's one thing we're trying to help you out with here. But there are so many campgrounds outside of the park. Many of them are around Hebgen Lake. Well, they're just all over the place. They're all over the place on all entrances. But like we've camped at Hebgen Lake before. Beautiful, beautiful area with. And here's one thing a lot of people have said: the campgrounds outside of the park probably nicer than inside the park. So those campsites tend to be a little larger. Although I haven't noticed it being a problem when we camped inside the park, but that's one comment that people have made. The costs are really affordable either way. I mean, they're only usually probably $20 bucks a night or something like that, 25 bucks a night. They're really affordable. Oh, one thing to know too, inside the park, they don't accommodate large RVs well. So if you're driving your big old RV across country to Yellowstone, you better check on the lengths on how they measure it, okay? The other thing is when inside the park, they'll say, okay, you have like a 40-foot length for camping. Well, that is, you can't double up, so you can't like park your trailer there and then park your truck next to it and say, okay, they're 40. When they say 40 feet, they're saying the whole thing, because most of them are like one, you just have to back into the spot, or maybe a pull through, but not doubled up. Okay, am I making sense, Cheryl?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to read the rules carefully inside. Now, once you get outside of the park, a lot more options, a lot more flexibility. You're going to be able to find Forest Service sites and other sites that are going to accommodate your big RV. Obviously, you'll be able to find some glamping sites. That's a thing. That's a big thing nowadays.
Well, I wanted to mention kind of amenities at the campsites in the park. They do have flush toilets. They have running water. And then almost all the campsites are close to the big general stores where you could pay to go take a shower, buy groceries, things like that. And they have dump stations at the major campgrounds. So you'd have access to those things.
One campsite in the campground is Fishing Bridge RV Park. It's only RVs. You have to have a hard side trailer, and that's because that is real bear country there. A lot of grizzly bears are in that area, and they've made that hard-sided only. Okay, this is your thing.
Okay, where to eat. I'm gonna just be honest with you. If you're a foodie, Yellowstone is not where you're going to have great new eating experiences, okay? Yellowstone's not known for its cuisine. I'm just saying. It's known for its scenery and stuff like that. But there are 20 restaurants within the park, so you won't go hungry. They have a variety. They have counter service. They've got their general stores where you can buy all sorts of grocery and quick grab things. And they do have a few fine dining ones. You can eat at the Old Faithful Inn. You can eat at Lake Village. There's some very fancy places. I wrote a whole article about it on our website. You can check it out on food if you want to. But you're never far away from food. So just know that. Now, of course, we're filming this during the COVID pandemic. So at this time, a lot of things are grab and go. But things are starting to improve. And so we're hoping by the time you watch this video that there will be more accessibility to a variety of foods. One of the things that I have to give a big plug for is get an ice cream cone in Old Faithful. Their ice cream is supplied by Big Dipper Creamery, which is in Montana, and it's delicious. When we lived there in Montana for the summer, we'd see people lined up outside this ice cream shop, and we're like, what's all the fuss about? And then we waited in line for 30 minutes and got our ice cream cone and thought, worth it. We loved it. So you'll definitely want to try the ice cream in there. Get one while you're watching Old Faithful, get one up at Tower, just get an ice cream cone. And then Roosevelt Old West Cookout. This is also on the northern end of Yellowstone, but
This is something we're going to do this year is go eat at the Roosevelt Old West Cookout. So there's two ways you can do this. You can eat at Roosevelt Lodge, in kind of a fine dining steakhouse type of a thing, or you can ride a horse or take a horse carriage ride out into the hills, and they feed you kind of a cowboy dinner.
chuck wagon
dinner. So I'm really excited for this. I haven't done it yet, so I can't tell you exactly how good it is, but
we're excited to go do it.
But that I would say is that is the one unique dining experience in Yellowstone, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and like the nice thing about Yellowstone too is that you can go there many, many times, and there's always something new for you to do. Like we've been there many, many times, but we've never done this cookout. Yep. And we're constantly finding new things to do there. And if you want to do a return trip, you'll find new things to do too. If this video was helpful to you, we would really appreciate a like so you can spread this to other people. And if you are interested in trips to the West, subscribe. We are always posting new videos about new locations we're going and about how to go to them. And we also have some really great stories about the places, so check those out too.
Okay, next up is when to visit Yellowstone. This is another, really common question that we get on our channel. So let me just try to boil it down simply for you here. The main travel season for Yellowstone is May to October. It is open for about 3 to 4 months in the winter. That would be just for like snowmobile traffic and snow coach All the roads are actually snowed over. But the main travel season for Yellowstone, May to October, and really June, July, and August, by far, the main 3 months. Obviously, those are the summer months when kids are out of school, but they're also the most amazing weather months for Yellowstone. The average high is 80 degrees, gorgeous weather during the summer. This is not one of those you go during the summer and it's boiling hot and that's the only time you could go. It's a beautiful time, but those months are the most crowded. June, July, and August, by far the most crowded.
Well, and I wanted to just put this idea just down. I think a lot of times it starts warming up in the rest of the country in March and April, but Yellowstone is virtually closed during those months because in the winter they plow the roads up in the northern end so that people can go do their snowmobile excursions. But March and April are kind of, it's still snowy, but not snowy enough to do that stuff. So it's just a big mucky mess and the park's pretty much closed. So March and April are a no-go. No spring break at Yellowstone.
Yeah. May and October are the 2 high risk, high reward months. They're the 2 gamble months, okay? So they could be beautiful and very few tourists during those months, but you could also get a major snowstorm. And if you're visiting in October, you might get a snowstorm that closes the park for the rest of the year, because the park actually does close usually mid to late October for good, until December at least. Okay, so then those 2 months, I've heard people just rave about those months, but also I've heard people, my friend went there in October, and first day they were there, big snowstorm, park closed for the rest of the season, so they were done for their trip. It was crazy. So our favorite time is September. Okay, it's really nice weather. It's gonna still get cold at night, like 30s at night, 70s during the day maybe. Okay, and then the crowds. There's still a fair amount of crowds, but it's dying off from the big high summer crowds.
Yep.
Okay.
And the other special thing about September is the elk get in the rut. It means the bulls start showing off for the ladies. And if you go up to Mammoth, you're gonna see a show. They do, like, they'll kind of ram cars with their antlers. They do some crazy stuff, so it's kind of fun if you're not involved in getting around.
Yep.
Okay, all right, let's talk about weather. Okay, we're in the Rockies. You're gonna have some extreme weather. In the morning, it's pretty cold if you're going there, like during the season. Matt talked about that, May through September. It's gonna be 40 degrees in the morning. You're gonna be pretty cold. You're gonna want a coat, gloves, hat. And then by 11 o'clock, it's gonna be warm, and those boardwalks especially get warm. And so you're gonna wanna be in a t-shirt and shorts. So just be prepared for a 40-degree swing in the weather. Yeah, it can snow and storm at any time. I mean, even in the middle of July, you can get in a pretty cold, windy rainstorm. So dress in layers, bring some good water protection, like whether it's a poncho or windbreaker. Just make sure you have something that's a little waterproof.
Pretty much all in the weather.
Yeah.
Dress in layers, be prepared for those big swings.
Ooh, other burning question.
Another burning question that we always get, how many days to visit the park?
Ooh, such a hard question.
Our standard answer is 3 days in Grand Teton, 4 days in Yellowstone. But you could spend a week in Yellowstone and love it, which would also allow you to spend a little more time getting off the beaten path. So that is the one thing about Yellowstone. 90% of the visitors are going to hug those lower and upper loops. And really the sites are located right on those loops. It's not like you need to park and then hike a mile off of the loop. They're just right there on the loops with the parking lots right there. So if you want to avoid the crowds a little bit, just get off the loop a little bit. That's all you need to do. And having more days in the park would give you a little bit more time to do that. The thing is, there's a reason why people hug the loop, and that's because all these amazing sites are right there on the loops. So if you're going to be 4 days, you could do essentially 2 days on each loop and see a pretty good amount of amazing things.
And we say 4 days because we have created this incredible itinerary where you can see the biggest sites in 4 days. I think a lot of times we're stressed because we don't have enough time to come to Yellowstone and take 2 weeks to see the whole thing. But after all of our trips to Yellowstone and our studying and our experiences, we found a really efficient way to view the park where you're going to get to see all the big sites, plus a lot of like our B-list waterfalls, things like that.
Yeah.
It's just all about being efficient and having a plan, and we've created a really good one that you can check out on our We're in the Rockies in our store. So we encourage you to do that. If you're efficient, you can see a lot of things in 4 days.
Yeah, efficiency, and then having a plan. And the way we designed our itinerary was to be flexible enough too to manage multiple days. So like if you're there only 2 days, you can still see a lot of amazing things in 2 days. I think it'd be kind of frustrating to just do 1 day at Yellowstone, but
yes,
I guess some
seriously,
people do it.
our itinerary though, I mean, it has maps. It tells you how long you're going to be at the places for. I mean, it's just download, print, and go. It takes the thinking and planning out of it, because I know that when we plan our trips, we spend days planning our trips
Yes, we do.
because we want to make sure everything is just perfect. And the last thing you want is to go and miss out on something, especially if it's due to just lack of knowing the sites there or knowing how to hit it. Like some of these parking lots fill up early in the day, and so in our itinerary we give you a good order to go do those things so that you can get to those spots and see those things at the right time and be able to see all the things that you need to see.
Okay, let's talk about what to pack for Yellowstone. So we're just talking about things that are pretty specific to Yellowstone. Obviously, you're going to be packing what you need to pack on a cross-country trip if that's what you're doing. But specific to Yellowstone, let's go over a couple of things. First of all, a lot of you are coming here to see the wildlife, I'm sure. Now you can see them from the road. That's one of the things that makes Yellowstone so amazing. But they are going to be off a ways, okay? You're not usually going to be right next to them. Like if you're looking at Hayden Valley and Lamar Valley, the valley is fairly big, so you're going to be seeing them over on the other side of the valley. You really want to bring some binoculars or a scope to look at the animals. And so we have put a link in the description. We have a whole packing guide in the description, but we put a link to the ones that we believe are like the best value binoculars and scope. In fact, the last time we went there, Cheryl's dad had brought his binoculars that he had bought, these Vortex binoculars, and they were really, like, it is a game changer, I'm telling you. You could be looking at this bison. We were sitting there looking at this bison herd across the river, and then I said, hey, let me try those binoculars, and I looked in there and it was like, whoa. I mean, it was just right up close. It's a whole new ballgame. It really is.
And they come with a nice case that protect them, and it's not going to break the bank. Like, people can spend hundreds of dollars on their binoculars, and so these are kind of moderately priced ones. That
it really is the difference between sitting on the upper row at the ball game versus right down on the front row. It's a big difference. So we've got a link to that. And the spotting scopes can be a little bit stronger too. And you set those up on a tripod. Those can be nice because you're not bouncing around a little bit. So you can set it up on a tripod and look in there. And even on some of those spotting scopes, you can hook your phone to it to take pictures. Which is kind of my next thing is, if you're coming all the way out here to see wildlife and you want some pictures to remember your trip, if you're going to be taking photos, I would recommend getting a nicer camera that has a larger zoom lens on it. Now, I am not a major photographer. I'm not like a professional photographer, but I bought a nicer camera a couple years ago because I kept going to all these national parks and seeing these amazing sights, and I had this regret that I wasn't getting really good photos of these places. I was just getting my cell phone pictures. Cell phones are nice, but I'm telling you, if you see an animal on the other side of the river or something like that, that is not going to show up on your phone. You can't zoom in on those phones. It's terrible. So if you really want photos, I would encourage you to buy a nicer camera. We've got some links. It's just like the nicer beginner cameras. I'm not going to go into a whole thing right now on it, but we've got some of the information that you need to know in the description. And I'm not talking about going through a whole course on learning photography. Just, point and shoot pretty much, but they're nicer and they're zoom lens. Okay, so I bring those up because it's just such a big thing for people to see wildlife at Yellowstone. Other things.
Okay, don't buy hiking shoes. Bring a good pair of running shoes or cross trainers. I think when you think about going to a national park, you think you're going to be hiking around and you need like these rugged shoes, but the truth is Yellowstone is mostly boardwalks and groomed paths, and you're doing a lot of driving, and hiking boots are uncomfortable to sit in. And so, unless you're planning on really doing some hardcore hiking, take a good pair of running shoes. That's always what I bring. I have never, ever regretted it. You'll be a lot more comfortable. Your feet will love you at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we mentioned bear spray. You only need to bring bear spray if you're doing one of these off the beaten path hikes. And if you're flying in, you'll probably buy your bear spray from a store or rent it at the park.
Because it's not allowed on an airplane.
Yeah, you can't take it on an airplane.
And we'll give you a spoiler alert. After we tested all the bear sprays, we recommend Frontiersman. It sprays the furthest and longest. So,
If you want to see a sprayer, so go ahead. Okay, and then we mentioned just dress in layers, so you're going to want to bring clothes for that.
Buy some bug repellent. You guys, Yellowstone is full of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes can really ruin a fun moment. So bring some good bug repellent.
I haven't noticed it much around the Geyser Basins, though.
No,
if you're
but,
gonna do
but
a
if you're
hike,
camping at night or...
Yeah, if you're camping there, if you're going to do a hike that's really probably any hike, but Mystic Falls and the Fairy Falls hikes are notorious for the bugs. So if you're going to do a hike, if you're planning on doing some hiking, maybe bring it. Oh, and then snacks. Okay, here's the other thing. We didn't really quite cover this with the dining, but...
Our best recommendation is pack a picnic lunch.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be indoors in Yellowstone. Pack a picnic lunch and sit outside and enjoy the scenery. And you can buy all that stuff at the stores.
Yes, and there are tons of picnic spots. It's really a nice place to picnic. And another reason is because, again, you're driving these long distances. You don't really know when you're going to be able to get to the next spot. I mean, it's not like you're going to be in dire straits or anything like that, but you might want to stop and just watch an animal to see what it does. I mean, we saw a bear feeding on a carcass one time. And so you might just want to stop and enjoy the show. So bring some food with you so that you can eat it in your car, or you can eat it at a stop, roadside or something like that, so that you're not just relying on having to get to the next place for a meal.
And just one other thing to know about Yellowstone, since it is so big, generally when you leave, you're gone for the day. You don't go for somewhere for a couple hours and head back to your hotel. Like, bring some food so that you can go see the things you want to see.
It's an all-day deal. Another example is, let's say you're at like the Great Fountain Geyser. You know that's going to erupt in the next half hour or something like that. I would recommend staying there and waiting for that thing to erupt. It's going to be worth it. And if you have your food, then you're not concerned about the mealtime and stuff like that.
And water, of course. Always bring lots of water. They have fill-up stations at all these big stops, but bring a water bottle. This is something that National Park changes its stance on fairly often. Sometimes they're willing to sell you a disposable water bottle, and other times they aren't. So bring a good water bottle, fill it up when you can, and you'll be good. Okay,
so the next topic is what to do nearby the park. Now, we think that most people that go to Yellowstone probably spend just about all their time inside of Yellowstone because it's so big and there's so much to see and do. But let's say you're going to be there 4, 5, 6 days. You might have a little bit of time to do some things outside of the park. Give you some nice variety to your vacation. So in West Yellowstone, there's the Grizzly Wolf and Discovery Center. Highly recommend that. It is awesome. You get to see these grizzlies and wolves up close, and they're pretty active. Otters even.
And it's open 365 days a year, so any day you're there, it's open.
There's a rodeo in West Yellowstone. You can go horseback riding. The Playhouse is a really popular attraction, right?
And one thing that people really love is big gun fun, where you can shoot some really big guns, because we're in the West.
Yep. Shoot some guns.
They'll supervise you and make sure you're safe. They have zip lines, and river rafting.
So it's just, if you're like doing a big family vacation, I would highly encourage you to do some of these other activities to break up the driving and the sightseeing for the kids, for sure. So last time we were there, that's what we did. We did a river rafting, horseback ride, rodeo. I mean, great things to do. If you're up in Gardner, there are the hot spring. Mammoth Hot Springs is there, but then Gardner has that actual hot springs you can pay to go enter in and sit in the hot springs.
Yeah, you don't sit in the hot springs in the park, but you can go.
No, but Gardner has a hot springs there, and then up the road from Gardner is Chico Hot Springs, which is a little resort town that's quite famous, really popular place to go.
And there's also river rafting up there, so you can river raft. And the best place to river raft is in the Grand Tetons down by the Snake River. If you're gonna include Teton on your trip and you want some adventure, some rapids, Go raft the Snake River. Just go with the company. They'll keep you safe. Okay.
Like down south in Yellowstone, there's Lewis Lake. You can do some kayaking and some boating. There's just so much to do to vary up to give your trip some variety. Okay, and then out east is Cody, Wyoming. Now I mentioned that it's maybe not a jump off town to stay there and visit Yellowstone, but if you're coming from the east, that is certainly a town you want to go to on your way to and from Yellowstone. Very famous western town, really kind of comparable with Jackson, Wyoming, which is just south of Teton. These two towns have that western feel to them, we're going to take a trip to Cody here this year, and we'll do a lot more on Cody. But you got to visit Cody. They've got a huge museum there. They just have so much to do there. Wild horses, rodeo. I mean, Cody's got a lot there. So
We're almost there. Okay, so just general tips, things you need to know when you go to Yellowstone. First, is a cell connection not great?
no cell connection to the
Yeah.
park. Virtually none. You can't count on it.
No. Like, if you're staying outside the park, you get the information you need before you enter the park off your cell phone, and then plan on just roughing it.
Which is important to have the map, have a guide, you know, because you really kind of need to know where you're going. There are a couple of apps to download that we would recommend. There's the official National Park Service Yellowstone app, which has some cool little audio tours on it. Another thing is the Yellowstone Explorer app, where people can get on there and say where they've seen wildlife recently. So it might kind of give you some ideas there. So 2 apps maybe to download.
All right, have a game plan. I cannot emphasize this enough. Like, you already know this. You're watching our video. If you're still watching this, then you're a planner and you're going to have a great trip. But we do strongly recommend our guide. It does save you a lot of time because it is so complete. It is so easy to follow. It will guarantee that you have a fantastic trip. And something to complement our guide is we have an audio tour as well. People pay hundreds of dollars to get these personalized tours, and you can have that all in your car with our itinerary and our audio guide. Matt is a history professor, and he has spent so much time researching the stories of Yellowstone. You can learn about the wildfires of Yellowstone. You can learn about the drama between the wolf packs and just what made Yellowstone become a national park. All of those things you will love to listen to as you drive around the park. And I actually even love to listen to this audio guide when I'm just driving around because it's so interesting. So have a plan and learn a little bit while you're there. I think a lot of times history doesn't sound that exciting before your trip, but when you get there, you want to know everything about it, and you will not be disappointed in this audio guide.
Yeah, one of the things on our channel, so many people ask us questions, and it's so fun because they're just so excited to go to Yellowstone. They've never been there before, and so they're asking us all these questions on our channel and things like that. And I just, you know, I'm so, to me, if you visit a national park without knowing the stories behind it, you're only getting kind of half of the experience. There's some amazing stories that are going to help you understand the park. So I kind of designed my audio guide a little bit like a Yellowstone 101, you know, where I can give you some of the coolest stories. I've handpicked my favorites. And I teach, the way the audio guide's lined up is each section is about 10 to 15 minutes long. I talk about an aspect of the park or a story, like she mentioned the fires of Yellowstone, or like bear feeding. Bear feeding used to be allowed in Yellowstone, and it has a whole interesting story behind it. Visitors to the park used to be able to just feed bears from their car. And so I'll give you the history behind all of it, stories, information about the geysers, dumb Yellowstone behavior, people that climb into the Grand Canyon and stick their head in Old Faithful. So this is really where this is kind of my passion for this, and I love, you know, just seeing people have a great trip. It's really fun. So
Yes, we want to tell you thank you for sticking with us and watching us and letting us tell you about a place that we truly love. We hope that you're going to get to have an incredible experience at Yellowstone. We would love to hear in your comments any other questions you have or any of the fantastic experiences you've had at Yellowstone. Thank you for watching.